Right, so it's 36, so shall we make a start? And I'm sure that there will probably be more people joining us. First of all, a very warm welcome. I'm just going to share the screen and I'm just going to do some introductory slides. Let me just, and hopefully you can see that. And I'm just going to make sure I can see everyone in the room as well. So first of all, welcome. As you can tell, I don't have the lovely chair behind me as Agatha has, and I'm not Agatha. I'm Carola Böhm. I'm one of the professors in our department, Professor of Arts and Higher Education. And Agatha is at the moment, and we've seen her just a moment ago in the airport. So she is on travels back to the UK and asked me to host on her behalf. And of course, this is Rebellious Research, Arts Practice-Based Research Seminar Series. And most of the links, of course, as you will know, are on here. And I'm really pleased to say that today we have Iakovos Panagopoulos talking about in the quest of creating a third path in cinema in the Greek Academy in filmmaking environment. And I can see actually, Iakovos, from your CV that I've taken from your website, that it just fits so nicely. So you see yourself as pioneering in the combination of practical filmmaking and academic research, just right in the subject area that we're actually talking about, practice and the critical and the underpinning frameworks. But you're also an award-winning Greek director, known for works such as Flickering Soul Satellite from 2019 and Alimono, and I don't know if I expressed it correctly, from 2020. And you're also an official researcher in Story Lab, which is a skills training for democratized film industries. And I'm very interested in that title, actually, democratized film industries. And also a scientific collaborator in the interactive arts lab called In Arts. So I'm going to hand over to you. I'm looking really forward to your talk, and I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Carola, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm really, really happy to be a part of this seminar, and I really like the name of the seminar also, like Rebellious Filmmaking. I think it's very to the point, and thank you, Carola, for pronouncing my surname correctly. It's very hard, so I really appreciate it. Let me just quickly share my screen. Cool. So I'm just going to share a couple of information so you know a bit more of my background. So I'm a filmmaker and researcher, as Carola stated before. I did my bachelor in the Audio and Visual Arts Department in Greece, which is like the department in the Ionian University that I'm very happy to teach at the moment. I did my master's in UK, so I moved to UK to do my master's and PhD. My master's was in cinematography for film and television, so I went for something very practical in Bournemouth University. I did my PhD in film practice at the University of Central Lancashire, and I just finished my postdoc research, which is a combination of political sciences and film practice, about the idea of the heterotopic spaces in cinematic practice and how these spaces can help us in filmmaking to create different stories based on collective memory, maybe in the controversy of the official history, and how these spaces can work in this idea. I'm a part of certain networks, research networks, as Carola stated, and you see my films. I'm also in the process of creating a short film at the moment. We won a pitching award in a very important short film festival in Greece. And I'm a producer now on a feature film that we're going to shoot in Greece. It's an English, a British production that we're going to shoot it in Corfu. So as we tend to do in filmmaking, we tend to share our showreels. Let me just quickly share my showreel with you. Perfect. As you can see, I'm more dealing with drama and social issues in my cinema. I'm not dealing with comedy at all. I'm doing some documentaries here and there, but I prefer fiction. Let me continue sharing. Okay, so before I'm focusing on before I focus on this connection and on this creation of the so-called third path in cinema in Greece, I want to tell you a bit of the way that I was attached to this field, and I'm going to explain why this is important to what we're discussing today. So this is the audiovisual arts department. When it's a department that is very hybrid, and when I finish we're dealing with video art, with animation, with music, with sound design, with cinema. So it has a lot of fields that you can work on later on in the industry and inside the department. So when I finished the department, I had a very vague idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to go in the industry. I had a very practical background, and at that point, at 2015, when I finished my bachelor, we didn't have the idea of practice-based research, of practice-based PhDs in Greece, or in the idea that someone with a practical background can move to this direction. Can create research and filmmaking in the same time. It's not so big at the moment also, but I'm going to explain how it works in the future. So when I went to Bournemouth University to do my master, the idea that I had in my head was that I want to finish the master in cinematography, to work in the field as a camera assistant, as a camera operator, and maybe later on in my career as a director of photography or as director. And I was very lucky to meet my supervisor there, my PhD supervisor, Professor Erik Knudsen, which I know that you know because he was invited also in the seminar a couple of sessions earlier. And he suggested an idea. So when we started our PhD together in the University of Central Lancashire, I didn't know that practice-based research was something that it can happen. I was very fixed on the idea that I'm going to do a PhD that is going to be theoretical, and in a way, I'm going to connect it with my filmmaking, but I didn't know the way to do it. I thought that my films and the way that I create my own films is going to be something separate from my career as an academic, if that moved to this direction. So in the third year of my PhD, I returned to Greece to finish off my PhD and do my final films. Even then, the whole idea of film practice research and the way that these elements can connect together was starting to taking a form, but it was very vague in my mind at that point. And I wanted to return to Greece to do my films here, my final films for my PhD. So I was trying to find a way to fund this return. So I did something very unorthodox. I did an Erasmus Plus program in Corfu, in my hometown that I'm teaching at the moment, as a way to fund my last period of my PhD, do my final films, and maybe get connected with some universities and the notion of returning back to Corfu. And this is like the beginning of starting understanding that this notion of film practice is something really new in Greece. And I'm going to explain the situation in academia at the moment in the filmmaking environment. And it's something that if I want to move back, it's something that I need to establish because it's really new. But it's something that potentially in the future, and right now I can see that it's working, it can create many opportunities to both the fields. So right now in academia, in the universities in Greece, first of all, we are working exclusively on the public sector. So we don't have a situation like UK that some universities are private, some are semi-public, semi-private. So the universities in Greece are exclusive public at the moment. and they don't have any fees of studying and stuff like that. But the problem at the university, the basic problem that the Greek universities have is the lack of funding. So we find ways to fund our research through programs and stuff. In filmmaking, in teaching film in academia, at the moment there is only one department in Greece that is exclusively teaching filmmaking in Thessaloniki. And then we have departments like the one that I'm teaching, and I used to be a student, that we're teaching filmmaking as part of a bigger program, of a bigger schedule, okay? So in the academic environment right now, we have two kinds of academics that they work around filmmaking. First of all, we have theoretical filmmakers, theoreticians around film studies, that they hold PhDs, theoretical PhDs, they work on film studies research, and they're exclusively working in this field, in the theory aspect of films. And then we have practical filmmakers that they come from the industry, experienced filmmakers that they do like feature films, or they have been awarded many times in film festivals, etc. And they work in the university teaching their experience from the industry. One of the issues that we faced, and it's starting to progress over the last years, was the whole idea of evaluation, because and it's important to what we are talking about, because you can see that through this evaluation, the process in the university is slowly starting to change. So evaluation was something that a lot of people were afraid of in the public sector, and it took some time to start happening in the universities. So at the moment we have the quality assurance unit that is based in every university, and it's working in the notion of development of the institution policy, strategy, and improvement processes, in the organization, operation, and improvement of a quality assurance system, coordination and support of the unit's evaluation processes, and support for the external evaluation and certification process of the whole curricula. This is stuff that, of course, you are familiar in the UK system, educational system, but it's something that is really new in the Greek academic system. So when the quality assurance unit started to happen, we had, like in the arts, a very important question that we faced is this question that I'm sure that you went through the process also to wonder about, is, can every artistic work be considered as a research outcome? This is something that we're still facing issues in the Greek universities, in the way to ensure the quality and to measure the impact of every artistic product. Because at the moment, what is happening with the quality unit of every university is that they cannot really measure the artistic outcomes. Okay, they can measure the awards, they can measure some exhibitions that has like an international level or something like that, but they cannot really measure an artistic work in a different way. Okay, so, and this, as you can understand, can create many issues for people that they are also based very much on the artistic part of the research. But also the whole notion of people right now, the whole notion of people that can do both, that they are practice-based researchers, that they are film practice researcher or media practice or something like that. It's just right now started to happen. We just had our first permanent positions opened in a couple of departments around Greece that they ask for this kind of people. And we just have, a couple of years ago, the first art-based alumni from art-based practice PhD. So it's, as you can understand, it's something that is really new and starting to evolving. Also, the problem that we are facing now in the humanities in general in the way that we measure our research and our impact is that the Ministry of Education can only measure publications that they go through Scopus. So if your publication is not going through the base unit of Scopus, cannot be measured as an official publication to measure the ranking of research of its department. So you can understand that this kind of measurement can create issues, but it's something that it's working, and I'm sure that it's going to the correct path. Now, when I returned to Greece after I finished my PhD and I started working as a lecturer here, was the idea of how to establish this new area. It was something so new that the people, the professors in different departments couldn't really place it in a way. They didn't know if I was supposed to place as a practitioner or as a, but I had a PhD, so they didn't know how to place me exactly in order to do my work and stuff. So I thought that this is the perfect time to start establishing this whole idea of film practitioners, of film practice researchers in Greece. So I was starting to try to understand the solutions and that this new path would be able to offer in the Greek academic and filmmaking environment. So as a filmmaker, I noticed that there is a because during my studies also I was working as a filmmaker. I was trying to get funding. I got funding for a couple of my projects and more. And so I was trying to establish this path, what a filmmaker, a new filmmaker has to do in order to create a new film. So I created this graph here that I think that shows exactly, especially in the Greek filmmaking environment, what a filmmaker has to do in order to create their first films. So the first thing is to follow trends and rules. In order to create a film, you have to understand what are the trends at the moment in cinema and film festivals and stuff like that, in order to try to adapt your script to fit in these trends and rules. Because if it doesn't fit, it will be difficult to get funding. When you do that, you have to change your form and style from your originate idea and gaze in order to fit in these new trends and rules. You do that in order to find funding, and that means like to apply for very specific programs that we have in the Greek filmmaking environment. The national television is giving money to new filmmakers to create their first films. And also the Greek Cinema Center can also be a first step of creating your films. The problem with especially the Greek Cinema Center is it takes a lot of time to even get a negative answer. So you may have to spend a year and a half not knowing if you're going to get, even if you're going to get like a negative reply. Then when we find the funding, and not before that, we try to connect with production companies. So normally when you study filmmaking and cinema, you learn that producers or production companies, they get attached with you in the beginning of your process in order to help you also to find funding. This is something that is not really happening in Greece. So you go to the production companies when you secure your funding in order basically to give you their brand name and their connections to start creating your film. Okay, so these connections will also help in your distribution of your film, which is for a short filmmaker, it's mostly screening of your film on film festivals. Okay. Of course, your product has to be in a very specific quality, but if you are attached to a company that the film festivals know if you are not a known filmmaker yet, you are in the beginning of your career, it's really helping to get your film out there. And of course, to win awards. The basic problem here in winning these awards is that, as you know, if you win the best film award to film festival, that film goes to the production company, to the producers, and not to the director, which it makes sense when the producers are attached to the funding process, but in this graph here, it doesn't really make sense to get the intellectual property. And this is like the way and the path that a new filmmaker, a young filmmaker, has to do in order to create their first films. This whole graph would make total sense if we are talking about mainstream cinema, because in the end of the day, you are doing all this path and the director gets a very good amount of money in the end of the day. And also, it's a job. It's something that you do in order to make a living and to get money and stuff. In the independent cinema, this doesn't really make sense in the way that the people that we are attached, and especially the people that they try to live from independent cinema, which in Greece is not really a reality, because the people that they are independent cinema directors, they have to do other types of jobs in the field or outside the field in order to make a living. We do it in order to create something from our hearts, from our souls, and to create our own gaze. And you can understand why this is not really happening in this kind of path here, because you end up with no money as an independent filmmaker, but in the same time, you have to change your form and style so much in order to fit in these specific boxes that the independent industry has for you. So this notion of a new practice-based researcher, I believe that can create this notion in Greece for a film practice researcher. I think that it can create solutions in this part also, not only for academia, but in the part of independent filmmakers. Personally, it created a solution for me in a way that it allows me from research applications and research funding to create my own films, that I get to keep the intellectual property, and also I can create it with my own gaze, with my own understanding of the filmic language, without having to alternate my gaze and my notion to fit in the boxes of filmmaking funding or in the production companies. And also these solutions, I'm going to talk about it more, can also be attached to academia, because what I found very, very useful, and something that I'm sure that you are already familiar in UK, is that in the universities, a person that can also create research and also create their own films and get attached to this kind of research, it's very useful for his teaching experience with the students, and this is why the Greek university environment starts to changing. Discussing with decision makers in the industry of education, they are telling that they found out that this kind of lecturers and this kind of people, that they come from this combination of filmmaking and practice, or art making and practice, can provide a better experience in the students of attaching both. So last year, and it's published now, it's published since October. This is like my first book. Sorry for the Greek. It's called The Third Way, The Third Path in Cinema, the model of the academic filmmaker. The third path is not different from what you are familiar with as a way of film practice research, as a person that combines these elements together. The way that I created the notion, the idea, the words of a third path, it's because in the Greek cinema industry, the Greek filmmaking industry, there are a lot of people, and there is this notion that I was also familiar when I started working in cinema, that there is a very specific path that you have to take in order to make your films, in order to work in the cinema. You have to start in a production, to make coffees and go higher, and go to a higher role and to a higher role until in 10 years or 8 years or whatever, if you are a very hard-working person, be able to create your own movies. This is the first path in cinema, if you want. The second path, of course, is the theory, the people that are working around theory. And the third path is someone that combines these two paths together. And I thought it's useful to have this title of an academic filmmaker in the book, the model of the academic filmmaker, because I noticed that also abroad, the people that they are work around film practice, that they are filmmakers, but they also are doing research, they tend to use a title depending on the project. So I have a lot of colleagues from abroad, from UK or from US or wherever, that they are also filmmakers and researchers, and they tend to work the title attached to the project. So I thought that a title that can establish this new model in Greece is going to be useful for the future. So inside the book, I'm also discussing this notion, this idea of the academic filmmaker model with three very important people for me. Professor Erik Knudsen, he was my PhD supervisor, the head of Story Lab, a person that I'm very attached with, and I feel with him, I feel that he's a mentor to me, and also is a person that he's very familiar with this field, since he was there in this film establishment in UK. So it's really helpful to examine with him through the book the process of creating this model in Greece. Then I have Petros Sevastikoglou on the top. He's a teacher in the National Theatre of Greece, a very famous Greek theatre director and a filmmaker. And I thought that he is a very interesting person to interview for the book, to have his interview inside the book, because even though that he's not specifically fitting in the model of an academic filmmaker, saying that he's not doing research on filmmaking or in cinema and stuff, he's a person that works in this field. His cinema is very controversial, and he's not fitting in the boxes of the funding centers, but he's managing to do his films and attach his films to his teaching. So that's why I think that is a person that is really fitting of discussing this model for Greece. And then I have Iakovos Papadopoulos. He's a very well-known film critic in Greece. He's writing for a very big cinema newspaper. So I wanted to discuss this model with a film critic to tell me and to discuss how this model can also affect and maybe provide solution in the filmmaking environment, and to filmmakers that they don't want to get attached to these boxes and to these trends and to these rules, and how this will be able to move forward. Another issue that I'm talking a lot, and I know that it's something that troubles everyone in academia, it's the whole idea of the impact, of how we're able to measure impact. For us, that it's a bit more difficult since we have this bureaucratic system, and it's something that is now building in order to learn how to measure that in academia. So so in this notion, I was discussing with Professor Knudsen in my book how we can measure this impact to our research, to our practice-based research. So Professor Nunsen also in one of his papers and in the discussions that we're doing in the book, he mentions three very important questions that I want to discuss with you. These questions are really interesting because it's the same questions that we ask ourselves when we want to pitch our film, when we want to get the funding for our film. Okay, is why we want to do that. Okay, why this research? Why these propositions? These research propositions that we're having, or the film that we want to do. Why we want to do it? Why it's important, not only for us, but why it's important for academia in general or filmmakers in general. The second question is why me? Why I'm getting attached to this project? What new aspect I'm getting to this project? And the third one is why now? Why now it's very important to do this research or this film. This is the questions that they're also answered in this book for this specific model. The why, of course, is because it can create solutions in the teaching system of the Greek academia, but also for many filmmakers that they feel lost at the moment in this endless graph of trying to find funding. In the why me aspect, the way that I answered it in the book, it's because I was very lucky to be the first person in Greece that I come from this field, which is something really interesting if you ask my opinion, in a way that there are a lot of Greek filmmakers that they moved abroad, and some of them they end up doing exactly the same thing as me, but no one returned back to Greece to start establishing it. So I feel very lucky and scared in the same time. But right now I see the prospect of that. And why now? Because now it's the moment that the Greek educational system is changing. It's the moment that we are moving to something new. That's why I told you in the beginning with the evaluation that is something that it's the first time that we're discussing of practitioners, of art practitioners in the field and the way that we can measure their work. So I think it's a very important period to do that in Greece. So I also had a couple of two examples that I'm briefly gonna talk with you that I had in the book as case studies. On film practice research and how to establish impact. The second one, the woman in the window, is from my short film, Flickering Souls Satellite. So that was the final product of my PhD research. So this product was shot for my PhD. So when I come to Greece in the third year to try to find funding or a way anyway to shoot my film, I was very scared because I wasn't established as a filmmaker in Greece. No one knew me back then, and I didn't know production companies. I didn't know people that they may wanted to support my film and stuff. I just came with a very complete research around the notion of the film. So this film is about a person suffering from ALS. It's like Hopkins disease. So I spent a couple of summers in houses with a couple of months, sorry, in houses with people that they suffer from ALS. I created a lot of notes and I tried to communicate with these people, with the family of these people. I created boards in order to communicate with them because, as you understand, they don't have the ability to talk or to move a lot. So I was trying to communicate. I did interviews with people that they took after them, family or nurses or stuff like that, in order to create my script. When I created my script, I start searching for, and of course it's attached to my PhD, I start searching for funding and stuff, and it was amazing how, even though that I didn't have any connections back then in the filmmaking industry, I was able to find a lot of people to support me right away and to produce the film. So the film went quite well in film festivals. We won around 15 awards around the world. It got very publicly known from newspapers and websites, and so it hit the filmmaking goal that we wanted. But it's also a research product that is published in ScreenWorks at the moment, and is also attached to different publications and books and stuff. So this is like a very specific, like a film that worked as a part of a research, was able to get a funding not from a research fund, but through gathering sponsors, and was able to go to filmmaking distribution, but also to academia. The second example is from Storylab. So in the second year of my PhD, Professor Nunsen asked me if I wanted to go to California for a summer and get attached with the archaeology department from UCLan that was doing a research in California, and try to get attached with the Native American community there, that their ancestors was living in this land, and in order to create some Storylab workshops together that was based in their stories and their ideas on how in the stories that they wanted to share about their past, their land and stuff. So I was able to spend the summer in California with them. When I went there, in the beginning, I didn't have this connection with the tribe. So I realized that this beautiful space that we were camping and the archaeologists were doing their excavations was shared by 3 different groups. The archaeology students that you see in the bottom right of your picture, of your image, that went to this land in order to do the excavation. The people on the left, which are the rangers of the Windwolves Preserve, that they were protecting the land and the nature, and the Native American community that you see on the top right, that they didn't, they weren't living in the land, but they had like a deeper connection because of their roots with this land. So we did the workshops together. Professor Nunsen also talked a lot in his presentation about the methodological tool of ethnometeorology and the way that we are creating these stories and these workshops together. So I'm not going to talk a lot about that, so you don't hear it 2 times. So each of this group created a film that was based on exactly the stories and the way that they wanted to express themselves. The first film is from the archaeology students, The Digging Deep. It's a documentary about the findings and the whole idea of being archaeology and finding stories that you go through a land, through your work, you're finding new stories. Then it's The Life of a Naturalist, the second documentary from the rangers of this place, that they created a story of one day living the life of a ranger and how much they're attached with the land. And the third one, it's a video art, actually. It's something more experimental from the Native American community. And it's about returning to your roots, returning to the land of your ancestors and taking charge of it. So it's a very interesting combination of films. And these films are also, especially the Native American film, it's also shared a lot through the Native American communities, and the tribe is very happy and very proud of this film. We managed to do a second workshop together the next year. We were invited by the tribe to do a second workshop together, a very specific workshop. But also these findings were able to be shared in journals, in book chapters, in 2 books actually now in Greece that they were specifically talking about these films and these stories and this experience. So they were both two case studies, something more traditional like a film and how it's involved, and the second one that is more of a field research and how we were able to share the final films and products through research and festivals at the same time, how to combine both aspects together. So even though that film practice is something that film practice research is something that in UK you are familiar, and in the book we are talking, and in my book I'm talking about this new establishment in the Greek academia and industry. I also gave some options and some things that I, from my experience in UK and US and Greece, I think that they need a bit of alternation in establishing this new model in Greece. So what an academic filmmaker should have. So the first one is to be comfortable with both theory and practice, but without the theoretical analysis being necessary for his work. The theories to exist in order to support their own practice on the subject that they are dealing, to create a final artistic work that can be used both at a research level as deliverables and in an artistic context in screenings, festival, etc. Third, to provide solutions with the research both at an individual level by discovering their own gaze and in relation to the general impact that they will offer in the field of practical research. Because it's something that we're dealing now in Greece. That's why I'm also noting that in the book, that we have like some art-based, specifically artists, research artists, that they are creating something that, of course, it helps them in, they change their gaze, they articulate that in their theoretical work or in papers and stuff, but in the same time it's not really clear in how this new artistic product, this new research artistic product is offering some new insights to the community in general. And the last one, to be open to research with other fields in order to create interdisciplinary research and artistic products. This is something that since day one in Greece, I found it really interesting. So as soon as I returned back to Greece, I just got my PhD. I didn't have any connections, and when I started going to a couple of seminars or conferences and stuff like that, I got a lot of propositions offering for research jobs and stuff from different departments, from political sciences or anthropologists or linguistics departments, that they find that this film practice approach can really be attached with their own research. And actually, at the moment, I'm part of three different university research labs that in all of them we have funding, and we're doing different kinds of researches, and I'm there to provide the film practice aspect of research by creating films, by presenting the findings and the final products to festivals and to academia and to journals and stuff. So I believe that this is something that in 5 years from now in Greece, it's going to be an official field, where now it's something that is establishing. 4 years ago, it's something that was completely unknown. And I think that this whole notion can completely change the way that we see film academia in Greece, but also can create like a lot of solutions for independent filmmakers also. Thank you very much.
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Thank you very much. Oh, there's an echo.
Can you hear me?
Strange. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. I just see your picture is frozen to.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, and now it's better. There was a bit of an echo, but I think now that you're on earphones again, the echo is gone. So I have plenty of questions. I found that fascinating, also because it probably tracks my own sort of academic journey rather than the music technology field, which of course also has quite a long history, but is trying to put together two disciplines, but also establish itself as an academic discipline, and has probably sort of gone through a sort of similar journey that you've gone through. But my first question might be actually about rather the last things that you mentioned. And I know Fiona is in the room and she will know what I'm talking about. So I'm might bring her in as well, because this notion of film having the potential to wrap around something else. And with that, it can sometimes be misunderstood. So you mentioned in your last minutes, actually, that you're part of different kind of research projects, and you're making also films for that. And you might actually be in the tension of, am I just the person who provides a filmic expression of somebody else's content, or is my thing something very particular in itself? And I do want to bring Fiona in, because you've gone through that journey, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny that you came in on this moment, actually, Carola, because it's exactly what I picked out as well at the end, because I can so link to what you're actually saying in a number of those areas. I'm looking to my left here because I made a few notes, because I can't remember everything perfect. These days. It must be an age thing, I don't know. But a number of those areas absolutely ring true with some of the work that I've been doing in factual and documentary production, and how you're working, and this notion of creating the artistic work, you say there, at a research level as a deliverable, and at an artistic level as well. Absolutely, I think so. I think that is the way forward, isn't it? That we are actually creating content that's for public domain on a wide scale and for our own work, but also something that is also in our areas refable, or it fits into that academic mode that we're trying to achieve as well as practitioners. Do you find that?
Totally agree.
And it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to break through that. I mean, I know you spoke earlier about traditional methods of publication as well, and sometimes there's a hindrance there to be able to break through, because you are still having work that has impact as well with what you're actually doing, and so it's a different method of that delivery, and not maybe writing those traditional journals. Do you find that too?
Yeah, that's the issue, that at the moment we are trying to express how this whole thing is going to work, because even if we are applying, so it's very funny, because I applied for funding for a postdoc when I came to Greece. I managed to have it later on in the end of that year. But when I came to Greece, I applied for funding for a postdoc that was exactly for that, to establish the film practice research and the difference between theory and practice. So I wrote a very big research proposal with a very good team of people that they believed in the project. And the first line I got a feedback from the reviewer was that Mr. Panagopoulos is a very good theoretician. he didn't understood the whole research proposal, which was very funny in a way, because I understood that it needs an establishment in order to actually start applying for funding.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And I think it's the funding pathways too, isn't it? It's the way that you're looking for funding. I absolutely link to that too, because I've come from a background of traditional television commissioning in the UK, and I'm a practitioner that way, in being a producer for TV programs that are published on that platform. But when I came into academia with that, I was trying to have ideas and content that didn't actually always fit into that mainstream funding process to be able to get onto those kind of platforms, but you still wanted to tell a good story. So how could you get that funding? So you are looking at different funding streams to be able to accommodate that. And I think academia can give the opportunities to do that. And I saw you mentioned Erasmus. Absolutely. I went down that same road myself. Absolutely. And it was extremely successful with a lot of work that we did for World War I in France, and different work that we did for museums and heritage. And if it hadn't have been for Erasmus, and if I'd been sitting waiting for funding, that whole concept and that whole what I needed to do now would have not happened. And that
totally.
It totally works.
Totally,
so when I saw Erasmus, I smiled. I thought, you've done the same. You've done totally the same.
And of course, Erasmus changed over the years, and one could actually say that, we as the practitioners, as well as academics, brought Erasmus into the space where it could hold both practical, educational and research elements in its whole program. And I still remember where Erasmus was just a student exchange program, and then it moved into more project work that benefited learning communities, and then it moved into the process of allowing also research to underpin those kinds of projects. So it's in some ways it has evolved because we made sure it involved as an academic community.
What do you feel? I'm going to ask you this question straight out as well. Do you feel as though you're, as you would say, pushing through treacle a bit at times? As it's difficult to get through the traditional.
Yeah, like it's something that of course is there, so it's difficult. But like in Greece, we know that everything is difficult in this way. So you always have to push through things in order to get something out of it. But it's as scary as exciting at the same time, because when I came back to Greece, all of my academic friends or professors and stuff, they were like, okay, it's a new field. Like you need to be attached to something that people know, so they know that you are a part of it. But when I came, I realized that this is a golden opportunity to establish that here, which is going to be difficult. But in a way, seeing how this is involved, it shows that it's something that it's really worth it.
Absolutely. I'm just going to make sure that if other people want to ask questions, please do raise your hand or just say so, or take yourself off the mic. Otherwise, probably Fiona and I will just continue to throw questions and comments. No, that's absolutely fine. Because I was just thinking also of something earlier in your talk that you did, because of course the sort of evolution of universities in different countries have different kinds of trajectories or histories, and specifically in the UK. So my feeling is that the UK has managed to position itself quite at the forefront as practice, as research, because there's a sort of historical notion that you have both medieval universities, which were heavily vocationally based, as well as the Humboldt, sort of more modern universities, where research was part of it, but research in a very particular humanistic arts, humanities kind of style of way. And so you have this juxtaposition. And of course, the medieval universities in other countries like Germany, yes, you have the Heidelberg University, but there are not so many. So most of them are sort of rather the modern universities from the 19th century rather than medieval universities. Whereas, of course, here in the UK, you have the Glasgow University, Cambridge, Aberdeen, all of these universities come from the medieval times. Take that into modernity, you have subject areas that are very vocational, like music, for instance, like medicine, like engineering, which are accepted. And then you started to have the problem that there were new subject disciplines like drama, which were initially not accepted. But of course, the difference between music in universities and drama in universities in terms of the content is not very far away, but it's just a historical difference of the evolution of these disciplines. And I think that allowed then, especially because of course we had the 1992 Act of new universities or universities of applied sciences becoming full universities, you had this really assertive stance of saying practice, whether that's film, music, and I even, add art and design and dance to it, should be put at the similar level as other vocational subject areas like engineering, like medicine, which never had a problem to establish themselves in research contexts. But of course, there are nuanced differences. So music is much more established than drama. Drama is much more established than dance. Dance is much more established than, I don't know, dance and art and design have a sort of similar sort of research understanding in our universities, I would say. But, I don't know the history of universities in Greece and how that influenced that mixture.
That's a really good question. Actually, like the first university in Greece was based in Corfu, so that's interesting. So in an island, because it was in the beginning of the Greek state, after the revolution of 1821, that we were established as an official Greek state. The the governor was from Corfu, and the first like Ionian state was like the beginning of Hellenism that was established in the rest of Greece after it was freed by the Turkish occupation. So the universities now, the areas that you talk like engineering or medicine or physics or math or stuff like that are very established, and especially the ones that they are working through medicine, of course, as in the rest of the world, have a much more bigger amount of the funding pie, of course, and the humanities much less. So in the way of the humanities that they are established, so I told before that we only have one cinema department, that filmmaking department, that it's teaching in a university level in the public sector cinema filmmaking, which is based in Thessaloniki. We have a theater department in Patra that is based especially on that, and we have like departments that they work around media and film, that they are based in Athens and some areas in the islands of Greece. In Kefalonia, we have one in the Ionian University, and we have departments that they work around audiovisual arts. The department that I am based in was the first in Greece that was dealing with this specific notion of audiovisual arts, and of course all the stuff that we're doing inside, that it's a combination of informatics and drama and filmmaking and animation and stuff like that. But the way that the research is established, it's different in arts and the rest of the disciplines, because of course medicine and stuff are very established. They know what they're doing it for many years, and a lot of our universities have a very important part of the funding pies of them participating. The question is, the humanities are also, the linguistics departments or the humanities are also attached in this kind of research. But this, the thing that is more new, it's the art-based universities. We are, as a university, we are very attached to big programs regarding AI or gaming or interfaces and stuff like that. But I think that in the very near future also drama, filmmaking, more like this kind of parts of these disciplines in the university are also are getting attached now to these parts. That's why I mentioned before that I'm also a part of 3 funding programs that they are running now. One of that is in political sciences. The second one is on the more interactive part of research and technology and art, and the third one is on anthropology and humanities. So I think that is something that it's happening, and it's going to happen more in the future.
Fabulous, fabulous. Are there any other questions in the room? And I do realize we're 5 minutes over, but I do want to give the floor to some other voices still.
I'd like to ask a question. I have a few questions, but I'm trying to just ask one because it was so interesting your presentation. I think it's so related to my job. As I'm not a filmmaker myself, I'm doing my PhD, practice-based research as well, and I come from sound background. I'm a sound artist, basically. First time I need to, my PhD is in film. No, it's just basically exploring ways of using sound more creatively, no fiction filmmaking, or how to transpose sonic thinking and sensibility through the filmmaking process. So it's a different language for me working film, and I'm producing a film, a documentary, experimental documentary in a way, not really traditional documentary. For the first time, try to translate those different languages of sound and cinematography. And that's almost like a testimony that the possibility of doing that is to academia, to research. Otherwise, how, you know? And my question is, in terms of the impact, I'm very, very curious about the why me and why now questions. And maybe come back to your PhD, or I don't know, reflecting how, in terms of evaluating practice-based research, in terms of the impact of the outcome, the film itself, to the process and not to the modes of reception. So how can you think about that, in, without using questionnaires or interviews or screening film and get feedback from the audience, but in the process itself of producing the film, asking those questions, do you think it's enough in terms of evaluation and, in terms of measuring of the impact of the artwork and research?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that these questions are basically more in the way of answering it for ourselves before we start the process. So it's when we have like a first draft of our script, or we have like a first draft of our proposal. It's really helpful to ask these 3 questions, because if you get the answers, you can defend your proposal more and you can move forward. Now, the ways that it's possible to measure the impact both in the artistic part or in the research part are quite established abroad, like in UK, for example, that you can measure your research on the journals that you submitted, you present on the conferences, and on the impact factor that these research journals have. Of course, in filmmaking or in art, we don't have many options of publishing. I'm sure that you are familiar with that. So there are not many journals that we can actually publish filmic work. Most of them are online in an open access, which is amazing, if you ask me, to be able to read everything and stuff. But of course, the impact is moving lower in these cases. Where in the artistic and filmic work itself, it's of course how these products are distributed. Of course, the basic issue that I think that we are facing, and this is like what got in the end of the interviews that I did with these people, and especially the film critic. The film critic told me that, this is like a very interesting model, and I think that can really help the independent filmmakers to move through another path. But he told me that what he thinks that it's not working at the moment is that we still have to go through the official festival selection and screen our films and try to win awards there, which is something true at the moment, which I think that is exactly what we need to think about in the future. So an alternative distribution model for films that they are both attached to academia and to filmmaking, which you can tell me that it's already happening in very specific journals, that you can publish your work and can share it with the rest of the academic community. But I think the challenge there is not only to share it with academic community, but also with people that they want to see films in independent cinema. I think that's the challenge that we are facing globally in the final artistic products that we'll have. That we share it with a very specific amount of people through our practice research community, and it's not like share with cinephiles, with people that they love independent cinema, which they traditionally tend to go to film festivals. So the way that we are able to distribute our films, I think it's a next challenge globally for our field.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating topic. But I have the job of slowly closing. And before I close, actually, I don't know, Alan, you put something in the chat of a new special issue devoted to academic filmmaking. And I don't know if you wanted to say a few words just about that special issue, because that's particular of interest of this topic of what we're talking about today. But I mean, if people want to just click on that link in the chat, there is a special issue devoted to academic filmmaking. But I'm going to just share as the last slide. First of all, a big thanks to Iakovos for this fascinating talk. I think I could ask so many more questions in relation to that. But I am going to slowly close and just announce that, of course, the next March session is on Wednesday, the 29th. And we have a talk titled Artist Researchers on the Margins by Sophie Hope from Birkbeck and Josephine Coleman from Brunel University. So that's going to be really, really exciting as well. And that leaves me just to say a big thanks to all the questions that have been asked, to the audience, but also to you, Iakovos, for giving such an inspiring, intriguing talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.